The first circle, located between heaven and hell, designated to hold those souls who are unbaptized as well as souls who have lived before Christ. Although these souls may have lived a virtuous life, they do not qualify for the goodness of heaven. Dante, Virgil, Aristotle, and Homer represent allusions in Circle 1. Dante alludes to himself as the author of the novel. Virgil alludes to an actual mentor of Dante in real life. Both Aristotle and Homer allude to a soul in limbo, living before the time of Christ.
Now will I have thee know, ere thou go farther, that they sinned not, and if they merit had, 'tis not enough, because they had not baptism, which is the portal of the faith thou holdest, and if they were before Christianity, in the right manner they adored not God, and among such as these am I myself.
Here, this quote discusses the circle's sin, which is failing to receive baptism. This enables the understanding that baptism is an important part of God's will, taking part as one of the 7 sacraments, which is followed in order to avoid hell, alluding to the Catholic Bible. It sets the Catholic setting of the poem as well as its belief system.
Great grief seized on my heart when this I heard, because some people of much worthiness I knew, who in that limbo were suspended.
The honorable name, that sounds of them above there, my life, wins grace in heaven, that so advances them.
When Virgil mentions the honorable name, he is referring to God. In order to be granted a spot in heaven, he mentions that one must satisfy God by leading a pure and sinless life.
Him with that falchion in his hand behold, who come before thee three, even as their lord, that one is Homer, poet sovereign, he who come next is Horace, the satirist, and the third is Ovid, and the last is Lucan. Because to each of these with me applies the name that solidarity voice proclaimed, they do me honor, and in that do well. And on beholding this my master smiled, and more of honor still, much more, they did me, in that they made me one of their own band, so that the sixth was I, mid so much wit.
This quote shows Dante's need to be recognized by Virgil as well as Virgil's stance in Dante's life currently, a respectful guardian. Through the announcement of his achievements, the reader is able to see that Virgil is currently the most important figure in Dante's life, and vice versa.
The master I beheld both Socrates and Plato, who nearer him before the others stand Democritus, who puts the world on chance, Diogenes, Anaxagoras, and Thales, Zeno, Epictetus, and Heraclitus. Of qualities I saw the good collector. Height, Dioscorides, and Orpheus saw I, Tully and Livy, and moral Seneca, Euclid, geometrician, and Ptolemy, Galen, Hippocrates, and Avicenna, Averroes, and the great comment made.
These allusions are intended to draw attention to the hierarchy of power in hell, as well as the notable and infamous people that reside in these quarters.
The sixfold company in 2 divides. Another way my sapient guide conducts me forth from the quiet to the air that trembles, and to a place I come where nothing shines.
The second circle contains the souls that are overcome by lust. Condemned by their sins of allowing their desires to sway their reasoning, they are swept away by hurricanes and stormy winds without rest. Minos, Semiramis, Cleopatra, and Achilles represent allusions in Circle 2. Minos alludes as a mythological beast determining where souls are located. Both Cleopatra and Semiramis allude to a soul condemned to the punishment of lust. Achilles alludes to one of the Greek heroes from the Trojan War, killed because of his love for the Trojan princess.
Thus I descended out of the first circle down to the second, that less space begirds, and so much greater dole that goads to wailing. There standeth Minos, horribly, and snarls, examines the transgressions at the entrance, judges and sins according as he girds them. I say that when the spirit evil-born cometh before him, wholly it confesses, and the discriminator of transgressions seeth that what place in hell is meet for it, girds himself with his tail as many times as grades he wishes it should be thrust down.
This quote describes the punishment of the sinners residing in this circle, attempting to emit violence and fear.
O thou that to this dolorous hostelry comest, look how thou enterest, and in whom thou trustest. Let not the portal's amplitude deceive thee.
The infernal hurricane that never rests hurtles the spirits onwards in its rapine, whirling them round and smiting. It molests them. When they arrive before the precipice, there are the shrieks, the planets, and the laments. There they blaspheme the puissance divine.
Further description of the punishment using vicious vocabulary. The words such as shrieks and plains illustrate the severity of the suffering of the sinner.
I understand that unto such a torment the carnal malefactors were condemned, who reason subject the appetite.
The empress was of many languages. To sensual vices she was so abandoned, that lustful she made licit in her law to remove the blame to which she had been led. She is Semiramis, of whom we read that she succeeded Ninus, and was his spouse. She held the land of which now the Sultan rules. The next is she who killed herself for love, and broke faith with the ashes of Sychaeus. Then Cleopatra, the voluptuous.
This quote shows the cultural norms of hell, the opinions of men and women. Virgil describes Semiramis using derogatory terms, while he describes male Greek figures as more honorable and women as immoral.
O poet, willingly speak would I to those two, who go together and seen upon the wind to be so light. Love, that on gentle heart doth swiftly seize this man for the person beautiful that was him from me, and still the mode offends me. Love, that exempts no one beloved from loving, seize me with pleasure of this man so strongly, that as thou seest, it doth not yet desert me. Love has conducted us unto one death. China waileth him who quenched our life.
This quote indicates a similar meaning between Francesca's description of love and Dante's admiration and creations for love poetry. The third circle are the sinners who have committed the sin of gluttony. With their excessive indulgence, these souls are punished as if they are like pigs, wallowing in icy, unpleasant filth. Cerberus, Chiaco, Plutus, and Charon represent allusions in Circle 3. Cerberus alludes as a mythological three-headed dog who watches over the third circle. Chiaco alludes to Dante's friend from Florentine. Plutus alludes to a warning to Satan. Charon alludes to how one soul drifts down hell as the soul is carried across the river.
In the third circle am I of the rain eternal, maledict and cold and heavy. Its law and quality are never new, huge hail and water sombre hued, and snow, athwart the tenebrious air pour down amain. Noisome the earth is that receiveth this.
This quote establishes the setting of the third circle using sorrowful language to indicate the severity of the sin of gluttony.
O thou that art conducted through this hell, he said to me, recall me if thou canst. Thyself wasn't made before I was unmade.
The anguish with which thou hast perhaps doth draw thee out of my remembrance, so that it seems not I have ever seen thee. But tell me who thou art, that in so doleful a place art put, and in such punishment. If some are greater, none is so displeasing.
This quote highlights Dante's empathy for the spirits as it continues to grow as the punishments become more severe.
Thy city, which is full of envy, so that now the sacks run over, held me within it in that life serene. You citizens were wont to call me Siaco, for the pernicious sin of gluttony. I, as thou seest, am battered by this rain, and I, sad soul, am not the only one, for all these suffer the like penalty for the like sin.
The quote describes Florence as well as the main sin of the circle. Through the use of sad language, Virgil is able to connect the sinner to the sin, holding them accountable for their wrongdoings, which is something Dante has yet to learn.
I wish thee still to teach me and make a gift of me further speech. Farinata and Tegihayo, once so worthy, Jacobo, Rusticusci, Arijo, and Mosca, and others who on good deeds set their thoughts. Say they where they are, and 'cause that I may know them, for great desire constraineth me to learn if heaven doth sweeten them or hell envenom.
They are among the blacker souls. A different sin downweighs them to the bottom. If thou so far descendeth, thou canst see them. But when thou art again in the sweet world, I pray thee to the mind of others bring me. No more I tell thee, and no more I answer.
This quote demonstrates the concept that the deeper a sin is within hell, the greater their sin is, and the lesser chance they have of escaping to the light of heaven. The fourth circle constrains the souls with extreme greed, those who revolve around the pursuit of wealth and material gain. They are punished as they are forced to fight one another through rolling weights and crashing into each other's chests. Fortuna, the avarice, the prodigality, and the river of Styx represent allusions in Circle 4. Fortuna alludes as someone who embodies luck. The avarice alludes to those who focus on wealth. The prodigality alludes to those holding onto too little of wealth. The river of Styx alludes to Greek mythology, separating earth and the underworld.
Thus we descend into the fourth chasm, gaining still farther on the dulsome shore which all woe of the universe ensacks. Justice of God, ah! Who weeps up so many new toils and sufferings as I beheld, and why doth our transgression waste us so?
All of them were acquaint in intellect in the first life, so much that they were measured they no spending made. Clearly enough their voices bark it forth, whether they reach the 2 points of the circle, where sunderers them the opposite defect. Clerks those were no hairy covering had on their head, and popes and cardinals, in whom doth avarice practice its excess.
This quote explains one of the main sins of the circle, which is holding too much knowledge, especially one that defines the existence of God. It also describes the brutality of the punishments condemned.
My master, among such these I thought ought some for some to recognize some few, who were infected of these maladies.
For all the gold that is beneath the moon, or ever has been, of these weary souls could never make a single one repose.
No amount of wealth will allow these sinners to escape the severity of their punishment, emphasizing the fact that hell shows no mercy.
Master, now tell me who what is this fortune which thou speakest of, that has the world's goods so within its clutches?
O creatures imbecile, what ignorance is this which doth beset you? Now will I have thee learn my judgment of her. He's who omniscience everything transcends the heavens created, and gave who should guide them, that every part to every part may shine.
Virgil talks ill of one of the spirits, expressing his everlasting knowledge of both the underworld, the overworld, and heaven. The tone of the quote exhibits wisdom as well as weariness regarding his experiences in hell. The fifth circle, surrounded by a swamp, houses the furious and unhappy. Those sinners, fueled with anger, are to fight against anyone and anything, whereas the miserable are to suffocate from their own rage. Phlegyas, the Furies, Medusa, and Filippo Argenti represent allusions in Circle 5. Phlegyas alludes to a guardian and transports Virgil and Dante through the river of Styx. The Furies, as well as Medusa, allude to threatening Dante and Virgil from descending to the lower parts of hell. Filippo Argenti alludes to a powerful Florentine, which is also one of Dante's enemies.
Son, thou now beholdest the souls of those whom anger overcame, and likewise I would have thee known for certain beneath the waters people who are sigh, and make this water bubble at the surface, as the eye tells thee wheresoever it turns.
Virgil educates Dante on the consequences of exhibiting rage, the main punishment of this circle. Using metaphors, he is able to communicate the severity and pain of the punishment at hand.
Thus we went circling around the filthy fin and great ark, betwixt the dry bank and swamp, with eyes turned unto those who gorge the mire, unto the foot of a tower we came at last. My guide descended down into the boat, and then he made me enter after him, and only when I entered seemed it louden. Soon as the guide and I were in the boat, the antique prow goes on its way, dividing more than the water than its 'tis wont these others.
Disdainful souls, blessed be she who bore thee in her bosom. Thou was an arrogant person in this world. Goodness is none that decks his memory. So likewise, here his shade is furious. How many are esteemed great kings up there, who here shall be like unto swine in mere, leaving behind them horrible disprairies.
Virgil stating the amount of people who are used to be praised on the surface are now being condemned in the depths of hell.
They all were shouting at Filippo Argentini, and that exasperate spirit Florentine turned around upon himself with his own teeth. We left him there, and more of him I tell not. But on mine ears there smote a lamentation, whenceforth I intent unbar mine eyes.
With Dante's curiosity regarding the origin and stories of each spirit, Dante's curiosity grows throughout the poem, displaying his innocence and cluelessness as he ventures deeper into hell.
Even now, my son, the city draweth near whose those name is Dis, with the grave citizens, with the great throng.
Its mosques already, master. Clear within there in the valley, I discern vermilion, as if issuing from the fire they were.
The fire eternals that kenneth with them make them look red, as thou beholdest in this nether hell.
Virgil utilizes metaphor to illustrate how hell has consumed its residents, mutilating and torturing them in ways one could never imagine.
The sixth circle is a vast cemetery, its surface scattered with open graves from which flames erupt. Here reside the heretics, those who rejected or defied the sacred doctrines of faith. Epicurus, Farinata degli Uberti, Cavalcante de Cavalcanti, and Frederick II represent allusions in Circle 6. Epicurus alludes to representing the core concept of heresy by denying the immortality of the soul. Farinata alludes to being an authoritarian leader of the Ghibellines who caused chaos in the divine order of politics. Cavalcante de Cavalcanti alludes to being the father of Guido Cavalcanti, who was Dante's friend. Frederick II alludes to being linked to Epicureanism and is the leader of the Holy Roman Empire.
If your prophecies are true, tell me why Florence is so hostile to the Ghibellines.
This reflects the intense political division between two factions in Florence, the Guelphs and the Ghibellines, who were the prophecies reveal a belief in the divine intervention of some higher power, not just politics.
300 years from now, the white lily will be so oppressed that it will be forced to flee, but it will not be far away when the black Guelph shall be overthrown.
You speak truth, master, but it is hard to forget the blood of my city and the faces of those I love. Farinata, even in this place of sorrow, your heart still burns for Florence. Why do you care for a city that casts you out and scorned your name?
Dante represents a paradox to Farinata where even in the place of sorrow or hell, her heart still burns for Florence, despite being exiled and betrayed by her own city.
I care because it is my home, Dante. Even in exile, my soul was bound to Florence. To stand for one's beliefs, even unto death, that is the legacy I leave behind. The flames here are nothing compared to the fire that burns within me still for the honor of my name.
His identity is inseparable from Florence even in exile, and as the Ghibelline leader, he is forced to face Dante, a gulf ensuring he leaves on a legacy that fires his soul even to death. The seventh circle is a realm of blood, fire, and destruction, housing those who committed acts of violence. Alexander the Great, Dionysius, Pierre de la Vigne, and Capanius represent allusions in Circle 7. Alexander the Great alludes to encouraging Dante to reflect on the responsibilities that come with leadership and the consequences of violence. Dionysius alludes to a tyrant who suffers in a river of boiling blood. Pierre de la Vigne alludes to being a tree Dante plucks a branch from who killed himself when his reputation was ruined by false rumors. Capaneus alludes to being prideful as he challenges the authority of the gods, thinking he could conquer Thebes.
Have you noticed that the one who follows you moves what he touches? The feet of the dead are not so used.
Indeed, he lives, and thus it's his own duty to show him that the one way, the darkest way, necessity brings him, not pleasure, the will of heaven, by which I come as guide, for such a one as never was before.
Great Chiron, I do not come of my own desire, nor out of pleasure or curiosity. I seek to understand the nature of sin, to witness the suffering of the damned, and to cleanse my soul in preparation for the light that awaits beyond. Then your burden is heavy, mortal, for there is no light to be found here, only pain. But if you seek knowledge, then pass. I will guide you safely, for this is my domain.
Chiron describes the painful setting in hell but calls Dante immortal, emphasizing the contrast between Dante, a living human in hell, and the dead who have eternal punishment. Like hell, Chiron's duality of being a centaur presents his half-human side keeping morality, and the half-horse side being our savage innate instincts, which make them such great allegories for uncontrolled aggression. A broad plain of sand, thick and scorched by flames, where all of those who once drenched the earth with blood must suffer for their sins.
Perhaps there is truth in your words, mortal. The weight of blood is heavy indeed, heavier than any crown or empire, but it is too late for regrets. Here we suffer and we remain.
Alexander's weight of blood implies a metaphor for his own guilt of being great. He sought to conquer other kingdoms through violence, which is why there is an existential theme of repressed guilt that his past actions have consequences.
The power of the sword may win battles, but the power of the soul determines a man's fate. Let us continue our path, for there are more lessons yet to learn, and deeper sins to see.
Each soul was housed in a thorny tree, whose leaves were eaten by filthy harpies, leaving pain and gaping wounds.
I was trusted once, Dante, a man of influence, but envy, that serpent wrapped around my neck, tightens its grip and turned the hearts of those I served. False accusations shattered my name and honor, and in despair, I sought the only escape. I took my own life, believing death would free me from the pain of betrayal.
Envy is personified as a serpent that is wrapped around one's neck, signifying how Pierre de la Vigne fell for the serpent's toxic tricks by taking his own life.
To see a man of such wisdom and worth reduced to a tree in this barren wood, forever bound by the choice of despair. But tell me, could no glimmer of hope reach you? No way to rise above the lies and hatred? I could not bear the shame, nor the weight of falsehoods that turned my friends against me. My mind, once clear, became a prison, and in that prison I chose my end.
Pierre's choice, though tragic, was a denial of the light that still could have guided him through his suffering. In this forest, the souls of those who choose death over struggle are bound to the form of trees, their bodies forsaken as they forsook life.
Over all that desert, the third and final round, great flakes of fire showered steadily, as snow falls in the Alps when no wind stirs. I saw multitudes sit hunched, feet tightened up beneath their thighs, and all were wailing in apparent misery.
Regret, yes, it clings to me like this burning sand. I cannot change the past nor escape the justice that binds me here. All I ask is that my memories live on, that the love I had for knowledge, for Florence, for you, is not forgotten. In fact, perhaps, I will find some solace.
Brunetto enhances poetic syntax through the dialogue with Dante, where the love I had for knowledge for Florence for you creates this passionate parallelism, shaping his regretful yearning for his legacy to live on, even though he is in hell.
Come, Dante. We must not linger. The path ahead is long, and there are more to see. Brunetto's words are for your heart to keep, but we must continue on this journey, for greater truths lie in wait.
The eighth circle, Malebolge, is a vast, jagged pit of 10 concentric ditches, each holding those who deceived others through fraud. In the depths of this circle, the fraudulent endure their eternal torment, each punished in a manner that mirrors their sins. Jason, Pope Nicholas III, Caiaphas, and Geryon represent allusions in Circle 8. Jason alludes as a seducer of Medea. Pope Nicholas III alludes to being a simoniac by the corruption of selling church positions. Caiaphas biblically alludes to hypocrisy by plotting against Jesus. Geryon alludes to being a symbolic representation of fraud, carrying Dante and Virgil down into the eighth circle.
And so, with my words, I ignited their hearts. We sailed into the unknown, and soon we saw a mighty mountain rising from the waves. But then, the sea swirled with wrath, and the gods, angered by our trespass, sent a storm that swallowed us whole. You sought knowledge beyond moral bounds, and in that pursuit you lost all. Do you regret your final voyage, Ulysses? Regret? I knew the risks, and still I sailed. In life, I valued wisdom and discovery above all else, even survival. But now, in this eternal flame, I burn for my hubris, for leading my men to death in pursuit of a truth that was not meant for us. We were not gods, and yet we sought their domain.
Brunetto juxtaposes Ulysses, where Ulysses does not feel regret but values his own prideful wisdom of sacrificing even his own life for the sake of material truth. He addresses his burn for my hubris, which he believed he could challenge the limits set by the gods, but in the end, it always leads to one's own tragic fate.
Your intellect was great, Ulysses, but you led it astray. In seeking to surpass the limits of man, you violated the natural order. And for that, you are condemned. Knowledge must be tempered with humility, lest it lead to destruction.
In the first chasm of the Malebolge were people plunged, all of one sort, and they seemed to be running without pause. As in the world above, they'd once been used to drive so many others to the whip.
My name was sung by poets in the world above, but here in the abyss that glory's lost. For all the cities I have conquered and all the hearts I stole, I gained no more than the endless whip that drives me now. I sought to rule, but in the end, I'm ruled.
Jason not only seduced others, but seduced his own self as he became ruled by his own bounds. He had all the glory in the past, but now his future lies in the abyss, symbolizing that justice always comes in every lifetime. The ninth circle is a desolate wasteland of ice where the traitors are imprisoned in the frigid depths of Caucasus. Here, the deepest treachery is met with the coldest punishment, a fitting end for those who turned against the bonds of trust. Cain, Antenor, Ptolemy, and Judas Iscariot represent allusions in Circle 9. Cain alludes to treachery by murdering his brother Abel. Antenor, a Trojan leader, historically alludes to treason by betraying his homeland through aiding the Greeks. Ptolemy historically alludes to the betrayal of hospitality by inviting guests to a feast and murdering them. Judas biblically alludes to heinously betraying Jesus Christ being in the deepest part of the circle.
Mortal, do you gaze upon me in pity or fear? For neither will move me nor free me from this prison. I was once the morning star, yet now I am the king of sorrow. You speak of my betrayal, but what do you know of it? What does a frail soul like you know of rebellion? I know enough that you turned against the very light that created you. You, who were blessed above all, chose pride and fell from grace. Now you lie here in this frozen lake, trapped for eternity, your wings a mockery of the freedom you once had. Freedom, you say? I sought more than freedom. I sought dominion, to be like the Most High. For why should one be reign over all, while others grovel beneath his will. In my rebellion, I sought equality, to bring the heavens to their knees. But this is my reward. For defying a tyrant, I am made a symbol of failure.
Lucifer is a symbol of the ID where he wanted to be like the Most High, but rebelled against justice in order to defy false equality of his own ego.
Your fall was not for seeking freedom, but for the pride that consumed you, thinking yourself greater than the Creator. The same pride that now freezes your very being as you gnaw on the souls of the greatest traitors. For every wing beat that you make, this place only grows colder, sealing you in deeper.
In the first zone, the souls are bound in ice up to their chins, and with their tears they freeze as their weeping continues. They are trapped.
I understand now the depth of such betrayal. I shall carry this lesson close to my heart to cherish those I hold dear and never to let jealousy guide my actions. Wise words, young poet, learn from my fate. The cost of betrayal is more than one can bear. In this ice I suffer not only for my act, but for the love I shattered and can never reclaim.
Cain is a biblical figure who represents betrayal, where he wants young poets to think about the ethical sides of their own decisions using the superego in order to keep their morals. In the second zone, I saw a multitude of souls who are bound and gnaw at one another, showing their teeth and suffering eternally.
I see now the gravity of such choices. What hope remains for you, Boca? Can the heart ever find peace in this eternal cold? Hope is a distant memory in this pit. All I can do is weep for my last honor and the brothers I betrayed with my cowardice. I am but a shadow of the man I once was.
Boca has a loss of identity as he becomes a shadow of the man he once was, evoking imagery of the confinement in hell where own soul is never free but is confined to one's actions. In the third zone, they lie supine, their tears freeze in their eye sockets as the light of heaven never visits this place of torment and despair.
I am Fra Alberigo, though now I am less than a man, for I betrayed my guests, those who trusted me. At a banquet I served them poison. Their trust became my weapon, their trust my sin.
Albergio, your actions reveal the depths of treachery. To harm those who come as friends is a vile act, and here you suffer the consequences of your cold heart.
Ambition and hatred clouded my judgment. In my pursuit of power, I thought I could gain without regard for their lives I extinguished. The thrill of betrayal seemed worth the risk.
In the fourth zone, I found the most dismal of all the damned. Here lie the great traitors who betrayed their lords and benefactors.
Hope fled when I sealed my fate with a kiss. Now I suffer the darkness I chose, and the love I betrayed is a memory lost to ice. I cannot change what has been done.
Judas, a biblical figure, prominently showcases his dual nature through the sign of a kiss, which is a friendly gesture but is used to identify Jesus to the authorities, revealing his hidden intentions and the betrayal that changes society forever.
Let this serve as a lesson, Dante. To betray one who loves you is the gravest sin. The price of such betrayal is eternal, and the heart becomes a cold, desolate place.
I carry your lesson with me, Judas. The weight of trust is sacred, and to break it is to destroy not only others, but oneself in the process.